You guys remember the first episode you worked on together? Dan, you remember the first episode of Batman the Animated Series that you got to work on with
Oh,
Kevin?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, yeah, the first one.
Yeah.
It's like the first one. Well, the first one.
the first
Um,
one on
the
Leather
first one
Wings.
on Leather Wings was the first episode that was boarded.
Yeah.
Um, and I was in character design at that point because I was getting ready to get married, and I knew I knew from experience how tough directing was, and I knew that the show was going to be super special, and I knew I was going to have time to dedicate to be to direct on it. So I came in as a board artist, and Bruce saw my portfolio and saw what I had just done on TMS for a Little Nemo project that they didn't get to sell, but and that's what I'd been working on the year before. And Bruce just like, no, I need a character guy.
Yeah.
I need you on characters. So I sat in a room and I did turnarounds and rough stuff out. And I worked on a rough idea for Man Bad, but it still wasn't there. And then Mike Kim came along and knocked it out of the park based on a lot of the stuff that I came up with. But
True. No,
but
and
it was
I remember I did that interview which I told you about, Julian, right? The
Hmm.
uh the last, the last time, how I came home after I had the interview with Bruce and they showed me that fantastic trailer. First person I called was Dan. And Dan Dan didn't even pretend that he didn't know what I was talking
Well,
about.
what happened is the trailer had circulated in the industry, so I had already had a VHS copy of it. So it's there was a bootleg that snuck out of Warner somehow and got into every studio. So I had seen it, and I was like, "Wow, I want to be on that." And I was on another project, and I was like, "Oh man, what happens if this sells? I'll have to quit because I have to work on Batman." And and what happened? It didn't sell, and so like the day after we all got canned, it was like I get a call from Kevin. I'm like, "Yes, yes, yeah, well, I'm free."
There sometimes God is merciful.
Yes, out a door and into a window. It's like, or is it out a window and into a door? I don't know. But in any event, that's I climbed into that Batman window.
Well, I told
Yeah.
Kevin when Kevin was on that On Leathery Wings is that one and The Heart of Ice are my two favorite episodes in this entire series. And I looked at Kevin, I'm like, I'm not blowing smoke here. I'm like, I really mean this. When that was probably the first episode I ever saw as a kid. Like I think of Man Bat, and I told Kevin I was absolutely and utterly terrified at Man Bat, but he was the coolest looking bad guy. Him and Mr. Freeze, Scarecrow's always been my guy, but him and Mr. Freeze, in my opinion, through that entire Rogues Gallery that you guys helped bring to life, those two had the best character designs. Now you said you had started the design, but you said Mike had finished it, or
Kim, yeah, Mike Kim was
Yeah.
his name, and he came on for a very short while, just a few months, and then like he went off to run it Stimpy because he liked doing the funny stuff more.
well,
So
Yeah.
he did a lot of incidental stuff, and but pretty much Man Bat. Like he made his mark on Man Bat, and I don't
Yeah.
think. Oh, he did the first Scarecrow. He did the first Scarecrow as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah. Because we
was
used
there
Dan's design for the
right,
storyboards. And
yeah,
then when we had the new design, actually back then, it's kind of like a blessing that so much of the layout crew at that time could not handle the style of the show, that like me, Dan, and Brad, I remember we just putting Man Bat on model,
yeah.
and just
yeah.
yeah.
What was it like working with that character right out of the gate, Man Bat?
Oh, it was like a dream come true for me.
Yeah.
I'm actually, it's like, I want to know, you were 3 years old and your parents let you watch the transformation sequence?
No, 3 years old is when this show came out. I was
Okay.
probably six. I want to say 6 or 7 because I've got
That's
I've got
still,
It is pretty young. But it was a different time back then. Like I look at some of the shit I watch now or I watched then at my oldest son's age. He's 14. I look at him, I'm like, dude, I don't trust you with a mechanical pencil, let alone American Pie. I was watching American Pie way before your age. You know what I mean? So it was a different time for sure. But I want to say it was like 5 or 6 years old is when I saw the show because I've got pictures of me at my birthday party and I've got Batman and I've got Robin and I've got all of these characters that I absolutely fell in love with. So it was probably around 5 or 6 years old is when I found this show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
That's how old I was when Adam West, when I saw the Adam West show. And so
yeah,
it's the
that,
same thing for me, except it was a different Batman. It
Well,
yeah,
was a different actor.
that was my first Batman. That was the first Batman. My aunts and uncles would always come down and they would watch this on the summer, and TV Land was the only thing they would watch. So Walker, Texas Ranger, In the Heat of the Night, Matlock, Murder She Wrote, everything that you could possibly think of, and then Batman 66 would come on too. And I just remember being just blown away, like how is Batman on the TV right now? I did no understanding of what TV was. I thought Batman was real, like most people, I'm sure, for the longest time until he wasn't real. And then he's real now still to me. So there's something about that's Batman that's like I said, it's been in my heart for a very long time. But getting it back to On Leathery
mhm,
Wings. When you guys are working on the show, Daniel in particular, because I know I had asked Kevin this, we had talked pretty in depth about On Leathery Wings, but you obviously see this trailer. You both see this trailer, and you guys go, I got to work on this show. I got to work on Batman the Animated Series. I got to get on here somehow. When you're on the show, does it at any point feel like it's fake? Do you think anybody's going to pull the rug out on you? Like, they're not going to let us make this show. They're not going to let us do this. This is too good to be true. Did anything like that happen to you, Dan?
For some reason, no. I always, it was something like, this is the way it was meant to be. There was always something in the back of my head saying, and people are going to lose their minds when they see it.
Yeah.
And I always thought that I was just, there was something that I'm like, when I just saw the designs in that trailer, I'm like, okay, because I remember seeing the Fleischer Supermans at a convention when I was a kid, and I was like, wow, this is how you do a superhero. And of course, I'll never see that again in my life. No one's ever going to do that.
Yeah.
And and it had always been my dream to do that. And all of a sudden, I'm given the opportunity to work on something that as impressive and just mind blowing as that. And yeah, I knew. I for some reason at that point I was like maybe too young and stupid to get that this is really really rare. I mean, I had been in the business for a while already, so I kind of knew that, but I don't know, for some reason I felt like maybe because the movie was such a big hit, I felt
Mhm.
like we got the support of a giant studio behind us here. I think, and I didn't realize how precarious we were. I didn't realize that giant studio that was behind us didn't really know what they had, and they had to rely on Tim Burton to like tell them to trust Bruce and Eric because
Yeah.
yeah,
they didn't know animation. I mean, traditionally, even Warner Brothers never really, you know,
yeah.
they threw all their stuff away. There was like,
So
they
depressing.
sold their stuff to Seven Arts. It was like AAP. They just like they sold their libraries away. They just like whatever. Yeah, they never really you know had
Yeah.
respect for it, and so we really didn't expect this to happen, but somehow it did. Um and they, Burton was behind it, but I mean, in the sense that he did the movie, and when they gave him the designs and showed him the promo, he said, well, these guys know what they're doing, trust them, let them do what they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And so they did.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they didn't trust me. No, I'm kidding.
well,
The people that needed to trust me trusted me, but I
yeah.
was I was unfortunately in the position, like when Dan was on the crew, I was in the position where, yes, we are pushing the envelope, and there was at the beginning, there were other members of the crew that really wanted it to be goofy.
Hmm.
I mean, you look at Christmas with the Joker, you know, just doesn't fit with the rest of the entire series, and that was like it was almost there was a big push from some people to get it to go there, you know. And I was fighting tooth and nail. So was Bruce.
Yeah.
So was Eric, you know. And
Yeah.
but you know, some people would like go and say, well, you know, how look how violent this first show is. We can never do that again.
Well, the funny thing about that Christmas with the Joker was the original premise is really dark. I mean, the Joker is actually like what they ended up with the Joker's favor, kind of like him harassing some
Yeah,
regular guy. That's what it was originally going to
yeah.
be. It was going to be the Joker kidnapping a family and holding
Mhm.
them hostage, and then the network was like, "No, no, you can't do that." So then it had to be like Summer Gleason and it had to be the Bullock, and funny with the candy cane gag in his mouth and stuff like that. It had to. We couldn't just like harass citizens like that and a family. It was just like no, this is too horrific. So the premise was originally a lot darker, even though there was a lot of silly stuff in it. They were trying to go for like a really crazy, a crazy, demented, evil Joker, and that's not what the show ended up being. So
Yeah.
With you talking about when you asked me your parents they let you watch that horrifying transformation of Man-Bat. Do you guys remember if there was any kickback on that episode? Like, did you guys have to like really fight for anything with the censors or anything stick out?
Well, the censors, that happened at the board stage.
Hmm.
Um, all I remember is that, you know, at Fox, everyone was pleased when the show came back.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's like we had meetings with BS&P and, you know, with the executives about violence, you know. We had to get around gunfire and stuff like that. So hence we have Tommy guns and things like that. But the argument was criminals, this isn't specifically Man-Bat, but but criminals, you know, Batman has to be shot at.
Hmm.
Criminals have to have guns, or else nothing works. The point is, Batman doesn't ever use a firearm. So he he's demonstrating skills and ability to not be shot. And the bad guys use guns. So, but we had to make them archaic style guns,
right. and
something a
and
kid
yeah,
couldn't get his
and
hands on.
stylized so that the details were sort of, they were Art Deco versions. They were just slightly like the details on a 45 were just kind of like, not,
Yeah.
but not until but the Jonah Hex guns were like dead on,
Yeah.
completely
Yes.
accurate. So by that time they're like, yeah, whatever. They're old
They're like, fuck
timey.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
So
had in Eternal Youth, I had at the end, I had Poison Ivy hunting Batman with a longbow, which was really cool. And they went, no, I'm sorry. We love the board. We think this is great. We really think this is great. But Kevin, we can't do this. And she said, why? It's like a kid can get his hands on a bow pretty easy.
yeah.
And I'm like, I certainly did when I was 7 or 8. Yeah, and I think about it. Yeah, you got a
Yeah,
point.
yeah. All you have
Damn
to do
it.
is,
Math
yeah.
checks out.
It just had to
So
be that wrist rocket.
yeah,
And
but it's
and like for
okay. It's
instance,
still cool. It evokes a bow and arrow thing, and crossbows are pretty cool. So, but
no, it
still,
wasn't as good.
it
It
is.
wasn't
It
as
is good. I know. I know. Well, who am
but
I kidding?
oh, and in Leather Wings, the only real big retake that I had to do in the board, for instance, was where originally you see these silhouettes inside of this room where we don't know what this creature is doing to this
Mhm.
guy. He's screaming bloody murder, and then he comes flying out the window. And they're like, you can't have a guy crashing through the window. And I'm like, but if he stays in there, we're gonna think he's just been mauled to death by this monster. And they're like, you have a point there. just make sure we see him land in a convenient pool of water. And it's like, you got it. So we made it like 5, 6 stories down into some drainage ditch, sewer with sewage water flowing into it.
And that being an early show, we had to make sure a chair broke the window. The guy couldn't break the
Yeah.
window with his body. So, but it's
Yes.
cool because he throws the chair at the man bat or
Yeah.
something, and then it goes through the window. So it's all justified.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a cheat. You don't
Mhm.
even realize that's what's happening when you're watching it. That
Yeah.
they have to break the window because the guy can't break the window.
I never
Because
thought about it until you broke it down.
Yeah.
it's
Well,
But that's the good storytelling. That's this guy. You take these things that are limitations and you turn them into story points and you make them work so that people are distracted and they don't really realize that
yeah.
somebody's saying no, you can't do that.
And
And that
not to
it's
name
like
names. Yeah. But other directors would
yeah.
come up to me, and I think to Dan too, and go, how'd you get away with that? How'd you do that? And I'm like, well, we kind of, what Dan just said, we dance around it and make it a story point. And I would notice in the other shows, it's like they made me make him fall into a bush. And I'm like, then why did you do the stupidest little mulberry bush imaginable? It's like
Well, yeah, I know. I
that
did the
shouldn't
same
even
thing.
be there.
I did the same thing with Fire from Olympus, where I had like some cops falling out of the blimp, and they land in a swimming pool or something, where we have like, but they actually did have guys die in that episode too, because then there are guys that fall, and we see them jump out, but the explosion is so huge that even though you see guys jumping out of the thing, it's like, what did they jump onto? And
Yeah,
how are they surviving this? And we just kind of went, let's just send it, and if they have a problem with it, we'll try to fix it then. And they didn't.
yeah.
So I mean, we didn't intend to kill the guys, but
Or
they
even
kind
like Showdown.
of did. Yeah.
Showdown, when the airship blows up, or when that deck, when Jonah Hex like just takes this lit shell, throws it into the ammo. Those guys are coming out the gun ports, but there was a lot of more guys inside that ship.
No.
And then there's that first guy that he lassos, yanks him away. Now the guy deserved it, yanks him away from his Gatling gun, and he's just hanging there.
Right.
And Jonah Hex goes up and does what he does. That the rest of his, did anyone rescue that guy? Or did
No,
he go down with the
he's
ship?
fucked.
Yeah, it's like, no, he's just dangling there helpless for the whole battle. And then he's there for the ship to crash.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's
But you
funny
don't
because
yeah, but you don't pay attention to it.
no. But one of the big like edicts was we weren't allowed to have contact with a fist and a face on the
Yeah.
show. We couldn't actually kick somebody or hit somebody in the face. And yet the way around it was to punch the camera and
Hmm.
things go white. And what ends up happening is that's so much more visceral and powerful, and you really feel the contact of Batman's punches that way because he's punching you in the face. It's not like it's not you are the bad guy and he's punching you in the face, and you feel the pain when you're watching. You don't have to see this to really get that that's what's happening, and
Yeah.
it's a sort of like subliminal. And if anything, it makes it a little more powerful than less if you do it right.
Yeah.
Did anybody try to push this 66 Bam Pow whiff? Anybody like that? Anything come to mind? Did anybody try to sneak that in or try to do anything with that?
Not on our crew, but like
No.
what I was talking about earlier, that was there.
Hmm.
Was it? Did they try? I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't like naming names,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
there
But
there
but
were
I know, I know, I
several
know, I know,
there
I
were
know.
several entities, and especially from the layout crew.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There was like some guys there was like, I've worked in this industry for 25 years and I'll tell you how I'm gonna draw this. And it's like, well, okay, have it your way, but I don't think Bruce is gonna be very happy. And it's like,
Well, that
what's he
was
gonna do? Fire me? And it's like, yes,
Fuck around and
that
find
could
out.
happen. That could
yeah.
happen.
I mean that happened like on my first day in character design where a guy was adding all sorts of lines to everything like musculature, so like He-Man because he had come from Filmation,
Yeah.
and I kind of told him no, don't do that because that's not what the show looks like. That's not what we're doing. See, look at this and draw like this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the guy kept going. I thought you guys wanted it good.
He-Man was
And
so horrible. He-Man was
yeah.
horrible in comparison to Batman the Animated Series.
And Dan and I, from the Deke days, like we basically had this library of the Fleischer brothers,
Mhm.
what you could get, and we're like studying those model sheets,
Yeah.
and then Bruce is studying that stuff, and Bruce's God, it's like, yeah, that and Archie comics,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
Toth.
and Toth.
And
Toth.
Toth.
Oh God. Yeah, it's like that's almost like when I would interview people, you know. I interviewed a lot of people coming on the show, not just for my crew, but basically it's like one of the first questions is like, what do you think of Alex Toth? And if that just makes you light up, yeah, I know. Yeah. See, it's like the same stuff, like especially Toth, especially from like the Space Ghost Dino Boy era,
Mhm.
that and Iwo Takamoto too, that
Yes.
really you can really see that in the early Batman designs,
Mhm.
Mhm.
you know, because it's like it's just you it's kind of you can't figure out like why does that drawing look correct when it's animating, you know? It's like you look at the Fleischer Supermans and you're shocked when you see the standard drawing of Clark Kent and you see how big his head is.
Mhm.
And it's like, but once it's moving, it looks right.
Mhm.
But if it's a frozen drawing, so it's like these guys had figured it out long before we ever even got into the business. So, and Toth is like the master of that. If I look at cartoons now, especially superhero ones, I'm just going, why has he got that puny little head? It's like big giant broad shoulders, little tiny head, you know? I don't get it. Little feet. What is it with little feet? Tiny feet, you know?
It
It's
must
like,
be it's in vogue these days. Now, with you guys
yeah.
being such huge fans of Fleischer, I'll ask you both this question, and Dan, we'll start with you. With you guys being such huge fans of the Fleischer Superman, was there anything that you drew direct influence from that you wanted to pay homage to in any of your episodes? Does anything
Oh,
stick out?
holy cow. Interesting. Um, boy. Uh,
I
uh,
stumped him. I got him.
yeah. Oh, I'm sure there is, because I mean, it's like for crying out loud. That's um, because I
Well,
know, for you,
yeah.
your robots. It was like, come
Yeah.
on,
Mechanical
the mechanical
monsters.
monsters was the thing,
The
because that
Bulleteers.
the bulleteers, yeah,
The reason why the Batcave is a drawbridge is the
right. It's the
Bulleteers.
bulleteers, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and people go, hey, you got that from Fleischer Brothers. And I'm like, what planet are you born on? I mean,
yeah.
yes, of course I did. That's why we did it. It's like, you know, but yeah. And even the vehicle designs,
Oh yeah,
very, very Bulleteers,
yeah,
even the Batmobile,
yeah.
the way that we
The greatest
would,
Batmobile of all time is the
yes.
Batman the Animated Series. My wife got me that for Christmas, and I will come in here when I'm not interviewing and I put the batteries back in so it doesn't get corroded and I turn all the lights on and I put Batman and Robin in that car. That car is, I'm not a car guy at all. That one, the Ninja Turtle van, and the Back to the Future DeLorean are my three favorite vehicles of anything of all time.
Wow.
Yeah, high
Well,
praise for that car
yeah.
design. But you've had some time to think about it, Dan. Does anything come to mind? Or I know what exactly is going to
No.
happen as soon as we get off the
Oh,
call. You're going to
it's
think about it.
exactly. I know. Well, that's why I should have asked for a list of questions before.
I don't ever write any questions down.
No, no.
I can keep going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like the machine gun fire, right?
Hmm.
I took the VHS copies that
Oh, yeah.
Dan and I had, and I would freeze frame, which is not good for a VHS to do it. And these things were precious to us, but I would actually freeze frame, figuring out why does the machine gun look so good?
Hmm.
You know, and I would actually use those muzzle flashes and stuff.
Mhm.
And I actually animated a lot of the effects myself
Yeah.
in the layout. I would actually do an extra couple of pages describing, like when you're firing a machine gun, you pull the trigger, shells are ejecting, and it's stuttering.
Mhm.
So you figure that out, those kinds of things. And those are all from Fleischer,
Yeah.
you know. And they don't look like Fleischer necessarily, but that is,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
what we were doing.
Sure.
Dan was doing it too.
Yeah. No, they used the silhouettes the way that they would do that thing where Superman would change into Clark Kent would change into Superman, and then we would borrow from that mercilessly, that idea and that way of doing it, and fight scenes with characters and silhouettes, we'd pull that stuff off because they got away with it. um and But in terms of character design, I mean, man, no, I was pulling from comics more than I was from the Fleischers when it came to that kind of stuff. It was
Yeah.
effects and mood and that kind of things. But I mean, I took Dr. Savannah from the Captain Marvel comics, and I made him a chemist in my my Batgirl Returns episode, and it turns out that he looks a lot like the mad scientist in the electric telescope episode of the Fleischers, because I think they borrowed Dr. Savannah as well, because it's
I think they
not
did.
Lex Luthor. That's a very Savannah looking guy,
Yeah.
So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
and I think Captain Marvel had already come out by then, which is what I think the what is it, what episode was the one with the double, the fake Superman, the Double Trouble, like, no, what was that one called? Showdown. And they
Not my
pull.
showdown.
No, it's not your Showdown. It was originally, that's what, where Superman grabs the guy's emblem off his chest, and the tear, when he rips it off, makes a lightning
Yeah.
bolt. So it's a direct comment on Captain Marvel. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
clear that he's got up
Yeah.
the fake Superman has got a lightning bolt on his chest, because that's what the
Yeah.
tear looks like. So
That's really
it was
cool. Was there
Yeah.
was there any other comics or artists that you were pulling from that you were head over heels for at that time?
uh well, a lot of them contributed. I mean, it was like Kevin
Yeah.
Nolan was doing some stuff. He did a lot of rough designs for Alfred, for Robin, and then Mike Mignola did Mr. Freeze.
Yeah.
So we had
Yes.
we just hired those guys instead of
Yeah.
it's like, instead of just using their stuff as inspiration, you know,
Yeah.
so
Who was you guys' favorite villain design?
yeah.
That's a rough one.
I know it's
Mainly
difficult.
because I mean, you can't really say it's like, because Mr. Freeze,
Yes.
and it's like, and I'm not even going to talk about the redesigns.
Hmm.
We're just talking about the original ones,
Yes,
but
sir. Yes, sir.
that design for Mr. Freeze, perfect, perfect, unique, perfect, says it all. Ra's al Ghul by Bruce, can't get better.
Mm.
I mean,
No,
it's
no,
perfect.
it was perfect. It was.
And it's kind of like where Bruce, like, he kind of came of age during the show. And the one thing that you can always tell, as an artist working on the show, um, drawing it, it's the thing I love about working on Scooby Doo's, not the redesigned Scooby Doo's, but like when I would work on, people would say, "Oh, well, you've come down certainly from the Batman days. You're working on Scooby Doo." And it's like, you know, if I ever get bored of drawing and working with Iwo Takamoto, I'll write you a letter or something. I mean, it's like, I mean, it's just, they're like the original Iwo character designs for Scooby are a pleasure to draw.
Hmm.
And that's what, like, I wanted to do a Mr. Freeze episode so badly, mainly because I wanted to just draw Mr. Freeze raising the freeze gun and aiming it at camera, I, I just I just enjoyed drawing that character so much. It's just a pleasure to draw. Bruce's Batman. It's a pleasure to draw that character, you know. once you figure out, it's kind of hard to figure out in your mind, like these swooping lines
Mhm.
and to get it right. But when you do, it's like you go, oh, I like that drawing. It's like, look at that.
There's a
You
guy
know,
I never get tired of drawing, actually, is this
Oh,
yeah,
Two-Face.
yeah,
you know,
That is
that
so
was,
cool.
that's the one that I'm like
yeah,
his that's my favorite, actually. I mean, I love drawing Man
no,
Bad. Clayface is amazing,
Clayface is
you know,
great.
but the Two Face is just like, man, holy bam! That's the
yeah,
design. They're just like,
yeah.
it just
Dan was,
nailed it.
yeah, yeah. No, that was Two-Face, part one, especially Two-Face part one was like where we just knew that
Oh
this show
man,
is, because we were struggling with scripts, not on Leather Wings,
no,
Mitch Bryan, but every script after that was like trouble. It was trouble. It was like, how do we make this good? How do you make this good? What are we gonna do to make this good? And then when they hired Alan Burnett,
You-
and when I asked, like, oh, what's this guy worked on before? Well, he was on Super Friends and he was on DuckTales. And I'm like, oh, great. Here we go again. But that script by Alan Burnett and Randy Rogel was gold. It was it was the best script I ever read up to that point.
yeah.
And yeah, it was just, and the thing about the first episode, you only see, you only see Two-Face for a moment at the
Mhm.
end. And that was one of my favorite boards I've ever done, was
Yeah.
the reveal.
Yeah.
It reminded me of Alien, that first movie where you're waiting for the entire movie for the alien to pop up. You're seeing it in flashes, or you're hearing it. You're led to suspense, right? You're led to, like, you're making up what this monster is in your head. And then I didn't put this correlation in when I was 3 years old, Kevin, so I apologize for not being that far ahead in time. But once I became a little bit older and I was a teenager, and I saw Alien for the first time. I just remember having this uncomfortable feeling. Same thing when I watched Two-Face for the first time as an adult. It's like, dude, you know it's coming. You know it's going to happen. You know eventually who he's going to turn into. But the little journey that you go on throughout the entire episode, you're like, holy shit, that paid off so well. So I can't agree more, man. All the episodes that you guys have talked about have been phenomenal. Now, with something I've always been curious about with Mr. Freeze. Um, do you know who would have came up? I mean, I can imagine it was probably in that first, I think the first episode, Heart of Ice, you see it, but the screen would go black and just those red eyes would illuminate. I mean, what is that shot considered? What is that shot called? Is that Mr. Freeze shot, or do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think that was mainly because if I was to give credit to anyone, um, I believe Bruce did board on that episode.
Oh yeah.
I
Mhm.
think he did, but
Oh yeah.
it came more because that was the Mignola drawing.
I
Yeah.
think so. I
And
think that was kind of
it
the.
just lent
I
itself.
think
It's
you're right.
just
I think
no
Mignola.
eyeballs,
Mm.
Yeah, those
no
glasses.
eyeballs, just like these glowing lenses.
Lenses. Yeah.
Yeah. They
But
had,
it was
yeah,
just like this classic 40s mad scientist looking
yeah,
thing. It was so cool. And he had that sort of Karloff face with.
yeah.
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah. Well,
He's
greatest is, it's so hard for me just to pick one because I want to be selfish and have multiple. But if I had to pick just one villain, hands down, it had to be Mr. Freeze as far as design go. Spot
Yeah.
on, perfect. Now with let's flip that question and go superheroes, man. So obviously we have some guest spots. You got to work on Jonah Hex, Kevin, and a few other characters, man. But with the exception of Batman, and we'll take Robin out too, was there any character on the on the good side, and this could be Commissioner Gordon, this could be Harvey Bullock, this
Oh,
could be any of those guys. Was there anybody that you guys loved to work on or thought had a perfect character design on the good guy side?
Gordon.
Mm.
Gordon was awesome. He was
Yeah.
our Commissioner Dolan character, which is
Yeah.
really kind of
Yeah.
where he got the jaw
Yeah.
and the hair. That was out. Yeah.
Yeah.
If
No.
he could have smoked, he would have had a pipe, but
Yeah.
we couldn't have smoking. However,
Yeah.
Penguin had the cigar. I mean, the
Yes,
cigarette
he
on
did.
the stock. They let us do that. For some reason, he got
Because he didn't look like the penguin without it.
Exactly. And
He
even the
just
network
no
was like,
longer.
just don't light it. No, I think we did. I think there was smoke on it sometimes. They let it go, you know. It's like, he's a bad guy. It's okay.
Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
but
Gordon is awesome. I like drawing Batgirl a lot. Batgirl was cute
yeah,
and really fun, and just
Mm.
she was really a neat character.
yeah.
So I had a lot of fun with Batgirl. Um,
No, and I loved in Heart of Steel, which was
yeah,
it's not the origin of it's the introduction of Barbara
yeah,
Gordon.
yeah,
And I really loved being able to do that dynamic where you see Gordon with his daughter and the way they interact. Like he brings Whoopi with him.
yeah.
It's like, well, that's Whoopi, It's like, and then at the end they leave and Gordon's like, I mean, Bruce Wayne's holding this little bear, and Gordon comes back and Barbara forgot her bear, grabs it away. You're able to give like these personality bits that and Bob Hastings is so
Oh, he was
good.
wonderful. He was so good.
It's like you're I miss seeing that guy because every time you go to recording, it's like there he is.
Yeah.
And it was weird because at that time when we would do the recordings, they were on PBS. This was for all you people, this is like DVDs weren't even invented yet. But PBS used to have show like, shows which were made, from live
Yeah.
television,
Yeah. Live
live
drama. Yeah.
television from the
Yeah.
50s
Yeah.
and the early 60s.
Mhm.
And I remember I would go and it's like Bob Hastings, Lieutenant Carpenter. He was
Yeah.
on them all
Yeah.
these different
Exactly.
stage, not on the not in the movies and stuff, but he was on all of those
Yeah.
live stage
Right.
productions.
Right.
And he was on No Time for Sergeants.
Right.
And he was
Oh, he's
great.
funny.
He was hilarious. Where they're trying to get Andy Griffith drunk,
Yeah.
with lighter fluid and stuff, and he's a hillbilly, so he's just
But but
smooth.
but he was a big radio guy.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
would he had been Archie on the radio for years and other shows as well. So it was like he had, and then he was also like Superboy for the Filmation Superman shows.
yeah,
So he had like connections to animation and to voice acting for years.
yeah. It
So
was it was
he was
amazing though, because I'd come to the recording and it said, "I just saw you on No Time for Sergeants," and it's like, is Andy Griffith really that funny? It's like, oh yeah, that guy. Oh yeah, it's like it was like you're seeing your uncle your
yeah.
favorite uncle,
Oh,
you
he
know,
was awesome.
and he was and yeah,
And he and Bobby Costanza would always cut each other
oh
up and just like always had a joke to top each other. And Costanza always had a joke. Um and and sometimes off color. It was like, ooh.
sometimes sometimes
Yeah, right.
it was like my uncle Steve telling a joke, and it's like
And and it was so cool because Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. would be there, and he is the classiest, kindest, nicest man on the planet. And
yeah,
but to see him sort of interacting with these guys, just like, oh, it was really awesome. It was so sweet,
yeah.
wonderful memories.
That's that's really cool. And speaking of wonderful memories, before we rotate off, Kevin, I didn't get to ask you this question last time, and as soon as we get off the call, it's like shit. I dropped the ball. I forgot to ask you this one, so I'm gonna ask you both this one. But if you guys could sum up your experience on Batman the Animated Series, one word, one phrase, one sentence, one paragraph, what would your experience for Batman the Animated Series be for you? Dan, we'll start with you. What would your Batman the Animated Series be for you?
Uh,
One word.
one word.
One word, one phrase, one
That's
sentence. When you think about Batman the Animated
here.
Series,
I'll
what's the
say
first
it.
thought that comes to your
I'll
mind?
say it.
Classic for me. It was timeless. It was etched in a time in history, and to be a part of history, it just felt like, and I knew it then too. It's not like, oh, I didn't know. I knew that this was going to be something would live forever, and so it's timeless.
What about you,
Yeah.
Kevin? What does it mean to you?
Rewarding.
Hmm.
because not monetarily or anything like that. You know, it's like it's not like I made a fortune off the show or anything like that. But it's like finally, yeah, there were times I worked at Disney Feature, you know, uh, but this was the time that I went like, yes, thank you. You know, just when I get that, I remember there were scenes in say Two-Face Part One where they're having the political, you know, the gathering at, you know, with the
Yeah.
where Harvey Dent's giving speeches and stuff, and
Mhm.
just the level of animation they gave to the old ladies. You
Yeah.
know, I'm like, thank you for not slacking off every sec. You know, it's like even that got really nice. You know, got attention and love.
Yeah.
And if you look at like in Harley's Holiday, the the scene where I boarded it myself, but the scene where Harley and what's her name? You know her, the Bruce Wayne's girlfriend,
Oh, Veronica Vreeland.
Veronica, where Veronica and Harley are in the car, and it's very, you know, there's nothing exciting. You know, I laid it out so that it's simple storytelling, and the love that the animators gave to those two characters in that one sequence is great. I love that.